There are two experiences in life that are universal. Everyone, no matter who you are, experiences birth and death. Most of us blast out of our mom's hoo-ha out into the world. For others, like me, our moms were filleted open and we were ripped out of her womb. Vivid, yes, I know I'm a writer. Birth is such an exciting and new experience. Literally, you have your whole life in front of you. Everything is open and possible. Nothing but new beginnings for you, my dear infant. Death, on the other hand, is the end. Your whole life is now behind you. No more possibilities. And everything that was once open is now closed to you. It is the end, my dear person, at some point after being born. We all hope death comes to us when it should. It should be when we're old and have lived a fulfilled life. Sometimes, though, death comes when it shouldn't. Heartbreakingly, death comes to children who have not begun to live. Death cuts someone's life short when they have just started living. Death comes to someone when they're so full of life. Death may not seem just, but it is fair. Death gets everyone and everything equally. Maybe that's why death is so scary to so many of us. There is no rhyme or reason for death. It just happens. To everyone. To everything. No one is immortal. No one is immune to death. As soon as we are conceived, the clock starts ticking. And death is just around the corner for all of us. The fascinating thing is that even though death is universal, we all have a different relationship to death, with our own mortality. A lot of us fear death. For others, like me, we have accepted the fact that we're going to die, and there's nothing really we can do about it. I don't want to make it seem like I'm making light of death, or I'm being insensitive if you have indeed lost someone close to you. Death has just been on my mind lately, for two main reasons. The first one is, of course, this Trump virus, that as of recording this video, it has killed 225,000 people in the United States. And it's extra tragic because those were all completely preventable. And second, 25 years ago this year, my father passed away. It's been a quarter of a century, and it feels like simultaneously no time has passed and all the time has passed. I was a child when this happened, and like I said, it has been 25 years, so I can't talk about it. Having someone so close die when they did makes for a different relationship with death. At first, I thought it was scary. Then I was mad at it. How dare death take away my loved one? Now, I have accepted it fully. So fully that when I die, my concern isn't what's going to happen to me, but will my loved ones be okay? And I find it so fascinating how varied our views and relationships to death are. I imagine it has a lot to do with how you were first introduced to the concept of death, and also with your culture. It's funny how most modern cultures are scared to death of death. Many ancient cultures are not only not afraid of death, but have special celebrations and ceremonies to and about death. Today, we are going to talk about the one celebration that has become very popular and in vogue in recent years. Dia de los Muertos. We need to get this one out of the way. I hate that we have to talk about
cultural appropriation,
but it has become part of the discussion when talking about Dia de los Muertos. So I have to address it. And no, I'm not going to yell at white people. Not in this video anyway. This look is technically cultural appropriation. Yes, I am of Mexican descent, but not the kind of Mexican that celebrates Dia de los Muertos. On neither side of my family do these traditions exist. So me doing this could be construed as appropriative, but I am doing the face painting for educational purposes, so it's not so bad. I also want to make the controversial statement that all of this is cultural appreciation. There is a very fine line between appropriation and appreciation. As long as you remain respectful and give voice to those who originated these traditions, you can celebrate Dia de los Muertos. There's no reason you can't honor and celebrate the loved ones you've lost. You can do the sugar skull face paint for a party or a parade or some kind of celebration like that, as long as you know what and why you're celebrating. And you're not just wanting to use this as a costume or for trendy aesthetic purposes. Be respectful, don't be a jerk. Hopefully this video will help you understand all the traditions and iconography associated with Dia de los Muertos. There is no one way to celebrate Dia de los Muertos. That's because most of the history and indigenous traditions are mostly lost to history, or they've been Christianized. During the research phase, I found many differing accounts of what is traditional, why certain iconography is a thing, and where a lot of these traditions come from. I'll do my very best to streamline and make all of this make sense. If I do get something wrong, I apologize. It's hard to have a concrete history or timeline when culture has been colonized and people have been victims to genocide. Also, Latin America, Mexico in particular, is not a monoculture. There are a lot of regional variations. There are a lot of ethnic variations. We may have the same language, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. La tradición de Dia de los Muertos originated in central Mexico, southern Mexico, and Central America. For over 3,000 years, the ancient Mexican Mexica, better known as the Aztecs, the Toltecs, and the Maya, had traditions that celebrated the dead. Most of the better known iconography of Dia de los Muertos comes to us from the Mexica. A lot of the lesser known stuff comes to us from the Maya. I'll be highlighting a lot of it in this video. Originally, it wasn't Dia de los Muertos, it was more like Month de los Muertos. It's believed that in the month of August, where the sun starts to set earlier and crops start dying, was when this Mes de los Muertos was celebrated. Since that is when death and change started to happen, the Mexica dedicated the month of August to the goddess of death, Mictecacihuatl. In some sources I found, they had the goddess Mictecacihuatl, a more prominent figure. Others had her husband Mictlantecuhtli to be the more prominent figure. Mictlantecuhtli was the god of death and the god of the land of the dead, Mictlan. The Maya had a lot more gods of death. The one that deals with the underworld, Yum-Kim-Il, sometimes called Cizin. For the Mexica, there is no heaven or hell. There is only one place all the dead go, Mictlan. For the Maya, Yum-Kim-Il is the ruler of what we would consider hell. The Mayan god Chak-Bole is the one to follow if you want to escape the underworld and go into the sun, which I'm guessing is their version of heaven. The Maya seem to fear their death gods, while the Mexica seem to worship and adore them. That's probably why most of the traditions of Dia de los Muertos comes to us from the Mexica. The Mexica believed that once you died, your soul had to travel the 9 levels of the underworld known as Mictlan. That trip lasted about 4 years. And once you got to the level where Mictlantecuhtli and Mictecacihuatl, called Mictlan Opa Xocaloctlan, at the Mictlan Opa Xocaloctlan level, your soul either disappeared or you finally found peace and you could rest for all of eternity. Depending on how you died is how your journey in Mictlan ended. Mictecacihuatl's adversary was the main Aztec god, Quetzalcoatl. There are a lot of hilarious petty perra stories I might cover in a future video. Mictecacihuatl is mostly forgotten, but his wife, Mictecacihuatl, is said to live on as a different personality that we'll talk about in a minute. It's important to note the Maya and the Mexica are not celebrating death. They are showing respect for death. They are celebrating the lives of those loved ones they miss. And of course, like in all cultures, this celebration was an explanation of death, a very important force that has to be respected. We have to keep the memory of those we love and admire alive, and that's the best way to honor and celebrate them. After celebrating life and death after a couple of thousand years, in the 1500s, the Spanish came and pretty much messed everything up. Let's talk about the specific symbols and iconography of Dia de los Muertos. The main traditional centerpiece of Dia de los Muertos is the altar with the ofrendas. El altar is a single table or multi-leveled table where people place what are called ofrendas. El altar is where people place photos of their loved ones and other people they want to honor. Along with all the iconography we've come to associate with Dia de los Muertos. Things placed on the altar have to symbolize the four sacred elements important to the native people who originated this celebration. The four elements are water, fire, wind, and earth. Water on the altar is symbolized by water or liquor. Earth is symbolized by pan de muerto, salt, and other foods. Wind is covered with Papel Picado and Cempasúchil. Fire is represented with candles and incense. All these things, plus some more that I'm going to talk about in this video, are the ofrendas. Ofrendas mean offering. To those you are honoring, you are offering them gifts so they can spend more time with you in these Dia de los Muertos. Remember, Dia de los Muertos is not celebrating death. You are remembering and celebrating the lives of those you love and hold dear. Some people do el altar and the ofrendas at the grave of the person they're honoring. Others do it at their home or a shared family home. Where you choose to celebrate is entirely up to you. This celebration is made to invite spirits and souls into your house. Keep that in mind if you are superstitious about that sort of thing. There are a lot of Christian symbols that have weaved their way into these traditions. A few examples are, the celebration went from the month of August to the month of November to coincide with All Souls Day and All Saints Day. The official start of Dia de los Muertos is October 31st at sundown, and the end is November 2nd. All Saints Day is for child souls, and All Souls Day is for the adult souls. Many times at these celebrations, you'll see crosses, saints, virgins, and other Catholic symbols. Contrary to what you might think, the people in Mesoamerica and the Spanish had very similar traditions to honor the dead. Surprisingly, the traditions from the Spanish, the Mexica, the Toltec, and the Maya mixed together fairly well. As much as the Spanish tried to eradicate tradition from the native people, they couldn't do it. There came a point when the easiest thing to do was to let people have their traditions but make them more Catholic. So things like decorating with human skulls and human bones and eating human sacrifices was deemed non-Christian and had to change. Plebes. Monarch butterflies are a less well-known symbol. The Mexica and other Nahua tribes believed that people's souls lived on as butterflies and hummingbirds. Since the monarch butterfly returns to Mexico starting at the end of October, that lines up perfectly with Dia de los Muertos celebrations. Sadly, these beautiful creatures are dying off because of things like climate change, and their homes are being destroyed in order to make room for some stupid, useless wall. Terrible. Cempasúchil, also known as Flor de Muerto, is a native Mexican marigold. The scent of Cempasúchil is believed to attract the souls and spirits of the dead. Many people decorate altares with petals from Cempasúchil to help guide souls to them and to their celebrations. This Flor de Muerto plus incense from the copal tree work together to better guide and attract spirits and souls. tissue paper or plastic squares with cutout designs, aka Papel Picado. Papel Picado is said to be perforated in order to help the souls that are traveling be guided to the altar you made. SBS Spanish radio reports that different colors of Papel Picado symbolize different things. The orange papel symbolizes mourning. Purple papel is meant for the Catholic Church. Red papel is made for warriors and women who died during childbirth. Young people get green papel. Older people get yellow papel. White papel is for children. And fittingly, black papel is for the underworld. Papel picado is meant to symbolize the fragility of life. This is possibly the best known symbol associated with Dia de los Muertos, la Calaverita de Azucar. This tradition goes all the way back to the ancient Mexica. The Mexica would use real human skulls to decorate in their celebrations. The Spanish didn't like that, so they taught the Mexica the tradition called alfeniques. Alfeniques is a Middle Eastern technique of mixing sugar, water, and merengue powder into paste and forming a calavera. The most popular kind of calavera is made of sugar, but there are also some made of chocolate, almonds, and other nuts. Calaveritas de Azucar are made to symbolize the sweetness of life and are made to make death seem less scary to children. They not only represent those who've died, but they're also great gifts to give those who are still living, because us Mexicans are experts in gallows humor. More on that in the next section. Some folks say you have to put the name of the dead on the calaverita. Others say you never do that because that's bad luck and bad form. Putting the name of someone alive on the calaverita is a great way to show your appreciation for somebody. Oh yeah, don't eat the sugar skull. You can eat the other types of skulls, but never eat the sugar one. Don't do it. This is the other most popular Dia de los Muertos symbol. Many people believe that the Aztec goddess of death, Mictecacihuatl, now lives on as La Calavera Catrina. When you see people do the skull face paint, they're trying to look like La Calavera Catrina. La Calavera Catrina was first drawn by illustrator Jose Guadalupe Posada in 1910. Posada meant this symbol as a satire of the upper classes in Mexico. Up until about the 1980s, the working class, the poor, and the indigenous people were the only people to celebrate Dia de los Muertos. The upper classes in Mexico thought it was a silly superstitious the lower classes and the indigenous people wasted time on. La Calavera Catrina symbolizes that with her fancy clothes and silly dances. She looks down on you and your silly traditions. Thanks to artists like Diego Rivera painting her in public spaces, La Calavera Catrina has become an icon in Mexico. La Calavera Catrina was born out of a tradition of writing poetry to the dead. The poems called calaveras are a way of telling a silly story in a funny and clever way. Calaveras are usually written by children as a celebratory school assignment. Thanks in large part to symbols like La Calavera Catrina, Dia de los Muertos has grown in popularity not only in Mexico, but around the world. I think this is adorable. The ofrendas of food and drinks are part of the celebration because the souls and spirits that have come to visit you might be hungry or thirsty, and it would be very rude to not offer them a food or a drink. And that's just adorable. It's tradition to have the favorite food and favorite drink of the person you're honoring. Like in many cultures, food and drink are made to bring people together, and offering them to the dead is no exception. The tradition of offering food and drink is one the Mesoamericans and the Spanish share. Pan de Muerto is a tradition that comes from Spain. In Spain, people would take pan de animales, animal bread, to the grave sites of loved ones on All Souls Day. When that tradition came to Mesoamerica, it changed into pan de muertos. The most common version of this pan is the round shape with an X shape on the top, covered in sugar. That shape is supposed to symbolize a skull and crossbones. Pan de Muerto has a citrusy flavor that comes from the azahar orange blossom. Another version of Pan de Muerto is one that is heart-shaped and glazed in red sugar. This Pan de Muerto is supposed to replace the Aztec tradition of cutting out a sacrificial heart and eating it. Guess which wet blankets disapproved of this tradition and made the Mexica stop doing it? Lame. Salt is meant to help purify souls. The dead need salt to help them in their next year in the afterlife. Without salt, a soul or a spirit is in danger of breaking down. Almost always, you'll see salt in the shape of a crucifix or a cross. This is to make sure the souls and spirits are not corrupted and don't break down and disappear forever. Remember to keep your souls pure. This one is one of the lesser known traditions. Tapete De Arena, or a sand rug, is more common in the Oaxaca part of Mexico. Usually this tapete is made on the grave of the person you're honoring, but sometimes they're made next to all the ofrendas and the altar at a home celebration. Not always made of sand, these beautiful decorations can be made of sawdust, dirt, corn, beans, flower petals, or lentils. Some accounts say these art pieces come from Spain. Others say this is a pre-Hispanic tradition. The Mesoamerican natives did decorate the graves of the dead with colorful dirt, ground up rocks, and cal. When the Spanish came, they brought about the Bible quote from Genesis 3:19. For dust you are, and for dust you shall return. Because of this, a lot of the Tapetes De Arena depict saints, virgins, Jesus, and other Catholic iconography. These beautiful pieces of art are made to help honor and mourn the person you're celebrating. How? I am not sure. In all the research I did, including reading some scholarly articles in Spanish, no one seems to know how this tradition started or why it's a thing. All I know is they look really amazing, and that's good enough for me. It also seems to be a beautiful mix of true traditions, and that's really nice too. These beautiful tapetes de arena take such skill and are so spectacular, they don't need more reason than that to exist. My best guess, though, these tapetes de arena could be like sand mandalas that also symbolize the fragility of life and how quickly things can change. Remember, cherish things before they're gone. If you're going to do Dia de los Muertos stuff, make sure you are actually celebrating a loved one's life. Appreciate how a different culture deals with a heavy subject like death. Remember, don't be a jerk. Cultural symbols and iconography are not frivolous costume or fashion statements. Death is very difficult to deal with or wrap your head around. There are the comforting words of national treasure Keanu Reeves.
I know that the ones who love us will miss us.
This may seem overly simplistic, but the best way to deal with death is to live. Live the best dang life you can. Love a lot, and try to make your corner of the world better. Like the traditions of Dia de los Muertos, celebrate the lives your loved ones lived. Celebrate how full and rich life can be. When your time comes, don't have regrets of what life could have been. Enjoy instead what life was. Enjoy those who made your life better. Enjoy all the things that bring you joy and peace. Stay safe, familia.